Right, so we're 15 people. Only 15 people. Okay. All right, I think we'll start. So I hope all those who are out here have seen the videos for week 3, and I think already some of you might have attended the previous tutorial problem discussion session as well. So let's jump head first into the first question. All right. So now, so there were two. So the module was on behavioral ecology and interactions. Interactions continuing from the previous week as well. Um, so we have a question out here. I'm going to read it out. There are two populations of large mammals in a community. These two populations are one of species A and the other is of species B. Now, species A has members A1, A2, that goes to a raised to n. I mean, you can just number the individuals as A1, A2, A3, A4, A5, A6, and it goes on. And then you have species B that has individuals B1, B2, and so on. So now you have to state which of the following pairs of interactions is the most appropriate choice. So read the options carefully. We have B1 interaction of B1 with B2 is interspecific and A1 with A2 is intraspecific. A1 with B2 is interspecific and A1 with B1 is intraspecific. A1 with B3 is interspecific, B1 with B2 is intraspecific, A2 with B3 is interspecific, A1 with B1 is intraspecific. Yes, you can use the chat box as well or unmute yourselves. So we have one answer with C. Any other? Oops, fly. Any other choices? Other students? We have about 17 to 18 people in this class. All right, C, C, C. Okay, C. Would anyone like to explain why is C the choice? Yeah, okay. All right. So I think we can get to the consensus that C is the correct option. Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Amul. Right? Right. That's absolutely correct. Thanks, Amul. Yes, thanks, Liston, as well. Uh, Same species, interspecific, different species, interspecific. All right, next question. So there are a couple of interactions shown out here. Um, you can choose which class do they belong to. So we can first go over the figures. Does anyone have any idea as to what these interactions are? Maybe we can first discuss that. Anybody has seen any of these images before or knows anything about any of these images? Like you can pick anyone. Yeah, correct. It's the sea anemone. Yeah, yeah, that's correct. Correct, correct. Yeah, yes, that is this figure. What about the other figures? Correct. Yep, you're right. What about this one and this one? Okay, the fourth one might be a little tough, but many of you might have seen this figure one. So this is, I can give you a hint. It's right now on the bark of a plant, but you can find these on rocks, on hard surfaces. Yes, I have. Uh, yeah, lichen. I've gotten a couple of answers. Lichen. Yeah, actually, lichen is the correct answer. Do you know what lichen are made up of? Yeah, yeah. So it's algae fungi. All right. And what about the last one? Any idea about this? This might be, I don't know if this figure might be well representative, but I can tell you it's ants with aphids, and they also have an interaction between them. So, any idea as to what kind of interactions they have amongst predation, commensalism, mutualism, and parasitism? Yeah, right. Any other answers? Anybody would say Ranul is wrong? Yes, Justin, go ahead. Commensalism, okay. Why would you say it's commensalism? Anybody else can also answer that. Anybody apart from Destin as well. Okay, which is benefited and which is neutral? Yeah, right, right. Who is this? Padmavati. Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Padmavati. Yes. So actually, as Padmavati says, both are benefited. Why are both benefited? No. No. We're talking about the clownfish and the sea anemone interaction. Right. 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 All right. Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I think sometimes clownfish, yeah, can fall under the category of commensalism as well as even mutualism because sometimes the clownfish leaves particles for the sea anemone to eat after it has already eaten. So yeah, and what about the lichen? What do you think the lichen example is? What type of interaction? All right. And what about the bees and the flowers? Right. And what about the ants and the aphids? So actually, if you might not know, so the ants actually acquire honeydew that is secreted from the by the aphids, and the aphids are also sometimes protected by these ants because the ants use the aphids for drawing nourishment. So also it is a kind of mutualism as well. Yeah, yeah, sure. Would you like to explain it? What was the definition of protocooperation? I don't exactly remember. If anyone has the correct. So if both get benefited, and if the definition of protocooperation is where both the animals get benefited, then it does fall under the category of a type of mutualism. Because if you mark interactions with pluses, zeros, and minuses, as also shown in the lecture, if it's like a plus plus interaction, it should be mutualism. Yeah, I don't remember the definition exactly of protocooperation, but if that is it, then yes. All right, all right. Okay, thanks. So yeah, I'm glad we are having a discussion. So please feel free to chip in to answer queries because this is just a discussion forum. All right. So next question. All right, I'm going to read this out. Previous studies have shown that various eucalyptus species can yield allelopathic chemicals which might be effective in suppressing understory vegetation. Allelopathy occurs when one plant species releases chemical compounds either directly or indirectly through microbial decomposition of residues that affect another plant species. Allelopathy is defined as a direct or indirect interaction whereby allelochemicals released by one organism influence the physiology processes of other neighboring organisms. So, what type of interaction is explained out here in the example of eucalyptus? And what category would they fall under? Is it a plus minus, minus minus, plus minus? Oops, I have two. Oh wow. I seem to have many of the same choice instead of the opposite one. All right. But well, the answer is clear. So, would anyone like to explain? Yeah. Why is it the first option? Could you tell me something? Yeah, about eucalyptus? Right. 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 Mm-hmm. Right, affected. So, what do you see around eucalyptus trees usually? Exactly. Yeah. So, eucalyptus is a very water intensive growing plant and they secrete allelopathic chemicals that prevents any other plant from growing in the vicinity. And it consumes like a lot of water, right? Okay, next question. So, plus zero interactions are termed as dash, and also please list out a few such type of interactions. All right, I think Devesh has explained them. Yeah, yeah. Okay, commensalism. Any other associations? Okay, commensalism. Any examples of commensalism? Anything that you have seen around you? Right. So, what happens in that? Right. Okay. Do the buffaloes get benefited? Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. So cow and crow, okay, a similar association between egret and cattle. Any other examples? Yeah. Sorry. Okay. I can't hear you really clearly, Rishikesh. Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah, yeah, that is, yes, you're correct. They are called remora fishes, if I'm not wrong. And they also have suckers and stick to these whales and sharks and hitch a ride along with them. Yeah. dugong and suckerfish. Okay, I think that might be a similar association. What about frog and plant? I'm curious about this one. Liston, would you like to explain frog and plant? Okay, we can just move on then. Uh, yeah, yeah, frog and plant, tell me. The plants get benefited by what? I didn't hear you right. Maybe if anybody else heard listen, you could explain. Not sure if it is. Oh, right, right, sure, sure, yeah, sure. It serves as manure probably. Yeah, sure. All right. So what else? Okay. All right. I'm just going to go to the next question. Okay. So here we have a figure, and it has been explained, but this is a very simplistic diagram of what is actually happening here. So you have a bird, and you have a person running towards the bird, and this is a particular metric that is being used here, AD. I'm not sure if you might know. And then also, when as the person moves closer, the bird tends to fly away. Could somebody explain what is actually happening out here? Yeah, right. Right. So, could you tell me what is actually FID? You've given me the correct explanation of the figure. No problem, no problem. You've got the concept absolutely correct. Yes, it does tend to fly off. Anybody has an idea what this? It's called a particular term, and it may not always be linked to birds. It could be any animal. Yes, it is a form of displacement, but I'm looking for the term. It's called FID. What is the full form of FID? Any idea? Any guesses? I think it was also briefly covered in the lecture as well. All right, so I can just tell you. So FID is called the flight initiation distance. So it is basically a critical distance beyond which, when you approach a particular organism, the organism will tend to move away. And AD is actually the alert distance. So, for example, like you can even say, probably, let's talk about, okay, if we say even in birds, like there are birds like crows that let you come really close to them, right? And they don't fly off, they're quite bold. But perhaps if you go to another bird, near another bird, for example, like a bulbul, have all of you seen bulbuls? They are these small birds with have a crest on their head. So they are much smaller birds, and they are not. They are much more um, jittery than crows. So their flight initiation distance would be a larger distance. So they won't let you come really close to them. So for example, even if you take squirrels, so squirrels in areas where people feed them versus squirrels in areas where people don't feed them. So if you approach an area where squirrels are always fed, the squirrels will let you come really close to them, right? Because they know that you have food for them. But if you see like squirrels in forested areas, if you go close to them, they just scurry off. And that is called the flight initiation distance. It's a critical distance beyond which, if you approach the organism, it will tend to move away, right? And AD is actually called the alert distance. So the organism hasn't moved away, but it is alert and it is aware of your presence. So beyond this alert distance, probably the organism has noticed where you are but doesn't consider you as a threat. As you move closer, it becomes alert. And when you move too close to comfort for the organism, it's going to flee from the spot, right? Is that does this make sense, or does anyone need any more explanation? All right. So let's go to the next question. Okay, so here we have essay. So cane toads are another amphibian that fattens up through a particular activity. And then the tadpoles of cane toads, when given a choice between cane toad eggs and similar looking eggs of other frog species, prefer to dine on their own kind. So in this case, this particular kind of action helps tadpoles grow up big and strong, and it cuts down also on future competition. So what is exactly this term that we're talking about? So the clue is in the statement. The tadpoles of cane toads, when given a choice between cane toad eggs and similar looking eggs of other frog species, prefer to dine on their own kind. Yeah. So what exactly is cannibalism? Right. And do you have do you would you know of other examples of cannibalism? Okay. Of other groups means of chimpanzees themselves, right? Yes. Okay. There's a black widow spider. Yeah. There are a lot of insects also that do display cannibalism, especially after copulation. I think another example is of the praying mantis. Yes, correct. Yeah. So yeah, these are very cool species. All right. So moving on to the next question. So this is another kind of interaction shown out here. So in the first figure is from the animal world, and you see a tiny bird trying to feed a big bird. The tiny bird has prey in its mouth, and it's feeding the larger bird. And in the second case, there is another tree which is a lighter shaded tree. This one that is growing over this other tree. And you might have, in fact, if you have walked around on the streets or even in the forest, you might have seen the species before as well. So, sorry? Uh, no, the plant species are you talking about? Yes, yes, correct. It is definitely a parasitic relationship, but this is the ficus species actually. And any idea about what's happening in this figure? Neutralism, not really. No, no, actually, no. They are parasitic plants. They are actually ficus species. So, like for example, your strangler fig species, that those fig species grow around. So this is actually in the earlier stages. In the later stages, you will see that this tree has completely grown around this larger tree, and then this tree becomes completely hollow because it's drawn out all its nutrients from this tree. The lighter tree has drawn out nutrients from the dark. Anybody for explanations with of this one? Yeah, correct. Brood parasitism. Anybody else could explain if they know what is brood parasitism? Correct, correct. And which is a very common example in India. Yes, yes. So you have your quail, Asian quail that lays its eggs in the nests of the common crow, and the eggs are also sometimes very similar in color and nature. But what happens in brood parasitism is that, for those who don't know, uh, they Asian quails don't make their own nests. They find another nest of another species. Usually, in this case, it is crows. They lay their egg in that nest, and then they just go about doing their other work without having to care for their chicks. And what happens to the crow parent is that the crow parent ends up caring for this Asian coil chick because brood parasites like Asian coil, the chicks hatch really fast, and once they hatch in the nest, they tend to push out the eggs of the crow itself, or the quail chick also pushes out the chicks, hatched chicks of the crow. And the parent, because it might be unable to differentiate between its chick and a foreign chick, it ends up feeding the quail chick. So there is another thing called a co-evolutionary arms race, where basically each species is trying to outdo the other. So the quail tries to find ways to lay eggs in the crow's nest by fooling it. So either what they'll do is they'll make eggs with very but similar markings to crow eggs, or the chicks, the mouth markings of the chicks, which are basically, so you see this orange color inside, they'll be very similar to the colors that are inside the host species chicks. So that's how they're able to fool the host species that they are not a foreign chick. But what does the host species do? So in this case, the crow. The crow will find ways to find out, has evolved ways to find out that it is not its chick. The egg size is too small or too big or too irregular. And sometimes, if that happens, they tend to abandon the nest as well. So there is always like a arms race between both the species, and these interactions happen between various species as well. Here you can see this is probably from somewhere else. It is again a cuckoo chick fed by a really tiny bird out here. Yeah, so both of these figures depict parasitism. All right, so can anyone tell me what is the difference between parasitism and predation? Okay. Right. Yeah. So, what is the crucial case in parasitism? You said absolutely the correct answer, Abol. So, the crucial thing in parasitism is that the host should not die, right? Because if the host dies, then the parasite doesn't have anything to feed on. So, the host will try and keep the parasite will try and keep the host alive for as long as possible, right? Yeah, right. Let's go to the next one. All right. So, what is this plant species here? We discussed it in our previous class as well. And how does this plant affect the ecosystem? So, there are several ways in this how this plant affects the ecosystem. So, this is tying all our concepts from our previous lecture as well. Saprophytic. Wait, sorry, did I miss this, or are you talking about the species being saprophytic? Or was that a previous answer? All right. Yeah, okay. So Ryanul says that the species is lantana. Yeah, correct. It's an invasive plant. What else? Does anyone know where it is native to? Where it originally came from? Okay. Any other guesses? Australia. Okay. North America. Okay. Any more guesses? We have okay Central America. America. Okay. America is very ambiguous. Okay. So we have Central America, South America, Africa, and Australia. We need somebody else. I wish I could set up a poll on this, but I can't. But anyone else could break this tie between four places. North America, any other guesses? So it's definitely one of these answers. All right, fine. Okay, South America. Yes, it's from South America. So how does this affect the ecosystem? It is invasive. Why is this plant invasive? How does it how does it manage to be so invasive? What are the traits that this plant has that make it invasive? Right. It has very high seed production capacity, which means okay, and higher seeds. That in turn means higher fruits. What would that mean? Yeah, high seed dispersal rate. Yes, seed predators increase. And then what happens to the native plants that don't produce so many seeds? So seed predators, yes, dispersal increases. Yes, they are. Wait, what are outnumbered? The native plants? Yeah, right. So the native plants are outnumbered because they're not producing as many fruits as lantana is, right? And then what's happening is that birds or whatever organisms prefer to eat the foods or fruits of lantana and disperse them. So they just spread rampantly through the forest, and this in turn leads to a lot of loss in native plants. Yeah. So I think all of you have got the concepts right. Yeah. All right. So next question, what's happening in this figure and what is the purpose of such a structure? We need not go into the details of this, but what is this species? Any idea? Termite, yeah, that is correct. And what is happening here? What is shown here? Termite, yeah, yeah, termites. Right. Yeah, that's absolutely correct. So yes, they are social species. I'm getting a lot of different. Yeah, so this is a termite, not a bee. Bees also have social structures, but so do termites. And what is the purpose for such structuring? Like you have workers, you have soldiers, you have primary king, primary queen, secondary queen. Yeah, the correct division of labor and correct to perform a specific and unique function. All right, yeah. So structuring helps in performing particular. So there's always a division of labor in such a structured social society, right? But and this of course helps in performing different activities. So everybody, each and every particular type of organism in a particular social structure performs only that particular activity, and then in some cases when a particular individual dies, like for example if the primary queen dies, one of the subordinates, the next in line becomes the secondary queen, in this case becomes the primary queen, right? So, could you give me an example of a structure that does not have such a hierarchy? And what are they called? Where there is no division of labor, everything is just the same. Uh, what algae? Bulbous. Oh, I see. Okay, I am not sure. Jellyfish. Okay. All right. So, do they form like just clusters, but all of them perform the same function? Right. 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 Okay. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So there is no hierarchy in the structure. There is no social structuring. Corals. Yeah. Sure. Usually they are, yes. They are also colonies. Yeah. So colonies. I was looking for the word colonies where there is no hierarchy in the structuring of the organisms present in it. I think one of the most common examples is any microbial growth on a Petri plate. So you have colony formations of the same bacteria that are present. All right. So yes, just summarizing, this is a termite social hierarchical structure, and there is a division of labor in such social structures where each caste, in this case it is called a caste of species performs a particular function. Right. All right. Next question. Okay, so jumping straight into behavioral trichonympha. I have no idea actually. Does anyone else know? I mean, we could all just Google it. What is trichonympha? Single cell anaerobic parabasalids of the order found in the hindgut of lower termites. Okay, I'm not sure. What does it do? Okay, I see it probably is a gut dwelling organism, but I'm not sure if it helps digest wood or not. But yeah, I'm not really sure. All right, so this is a graph from the lecture that was conducted on behavioral ecology, and here you have optimum territory size on the x-axis, and cost of benefit on the y-axis. And then you have benefit gain versus cost of defense. So, what is really happening here? Does anyone have any idea of what the term trade off means? Because to give you a hint, there is a trade off happening in this figure. Any guesses? Even if you break the word down, what does a trade off mean? Okay, what does trade mean? Well, sure, buy and sell. Okay, so what's happening? There is some give and take, right? Inverse relationship, correct? That's happening. There is a trade off. Yeah, you gain something and then you lose something, right? Sure, yes. We've all gone into, I think, a lot of investment definitions. Yeah, go ahead, Rishikesh. Cost and benefit. Sure, that's putting it in short. Exactly, that's like the cost or benefit. And could anyone explain this diagram with like an example? This graph with an example? It could be a hypothetical example as well. So what's happening out here? Right, 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 right. Yeah, I think you've summarized it very well. And so there is like an optimum point, right? So what is actually happening at this optimum point? So out here we have a line dropped through benefit gained, which is the dashed line, and the solid line, which is cost of defense. And then you have something called as optimum territory. What's happening at optimum territory size? Right, exactly. So where you're getting the maximum benefit and the minimum cost is your optimum size, optimum territory size, and this can be any kind of interaction. This can be in terms of, like, for example, a bird needs to travel X distance to gather food, right? And the cost for the bird for flying further distances, even though it does have more food to feed on, it expends a lot of energy to reach the further distances. So it reaches like an optimal distance at which it acquires the maximum amount of food, right? And if you see this, the benefit gain curve kind of plateaus after a point. So out here, even though the territory size is increasing, the benefit gained kind of plateaus. Why is that happening? It's not increasing like the cost of defense. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, exactly. So there is a limit to what a species can eat, right? And they need to find an optimum balance between that. But our cost of defense will obviously exponentially increase as our territory size increases. So yeah. All right. Next question. So what's happening out here? And how is this behavior helpful? Anyone has an idea of what this is called? So this is the sea, and these are fish. Any idea what is happening out here? So you might have, okay, so protect them from predators. Yes. Okay. Right. Sure. That is, yeah, correct. Yeah, protection from predators. Predators cannot concentrate on one prey. Lateral line organization. I am not sure what that term is, but if you have an idea of it, because you could explain. Okay, so actually, this figure is just a group of fishes, and this behavior is called schooling or shoaling activity. So they move around in large groups like this and have various formations. A similar thing is also found in the bird world, where you have murmurations of birds like starlings, where they form huge clusters and they're flying in the sky. But in this case, fishes usually move around in schools so that when a prey comes to attack, when a predator comes to attack these prey, they suddenly disperse off or they make confusing patterns so the predators uh, can't focus on a particular individual. I don't know what you are actually referring to, but I think the remora, because the remora example was for commensalism because they have suckers which they stick onto whales, and yeah, they are responsible for cleaning the larger fish, but don't, yeah, and they hitch a ride. Okay, what is happening in that in zebras? Right. Right. Yeah, sure. Yes, it forms a very confusing pattern and the predator is not able to focus on a particular target. So yeah. All right. So yeah, does anyone know what are the animals in this figure? They are found in India. Quite widespread actually. Central India and everywhere. No, they're not fox, but yes, it is a canine species. Yeah. Yeah, dingoes are extinct, but yes, it does start with a D. Yeah, they are dholes. So dholes are essentially Indian wild dogs. And what's happening in this figure, in this image? Can you see the animal that it has caught? Is it? Yeah, correct. It's a cheetah. So yeah, there's a group of dholes that have hunted down this cheetah. So here is a clear cut interaction between the predation of the cheetah by the dhole. But what happens in such a situation where you have, like, so dholes are a social species, right? They are found in packs. So packs means they have several individuals in a particular pack, and then you usually have the senior members and the junior members. And what happens in such a social structure? How is this beneficial? And what are the costs and benefits of living in such a social structure? Could anyone explain? What are the trade offs of living in a social group? Like, let's take, for example, the doles, where you have multiple members. Yes, correct. Group hunting, you're able to hunt down prey that is much larger in size. Right. So, sharing a common food. What is this? Is this a cost or a benefit? Right. Yeah, each individual will definitely get lesser food if the group is large. Sure. Yes. So, you see how trade offs work. So, rather than a single dhole, so if a single dhole were hunting alone, it might not be able to catch such a large prey, let alone a large prey. It might not be able to catch any prey. But yes, in the case of hunting in groups, they strategize and the predation is successful. But the cost of it is that the food is shared, everyone gets less food, and who gets the most food in such a social structure? In the sense, could you explain your question? I'm not really defensive strategy in the sense of. Right. Sure, yes. So if any larger predator is trying to usually prey on the dholes themselves, or usually the pups of the dholes, the young ones of the dholes, yes, living in a group does help in increase the group defenses. Yeah, correct. Those who tend to dominate a social group, yes, alpha male gets maximum amount of food. Sure, yes. So you do have a hierarchy in the social structure, and you have a leader or an alpha male of the pack who usually gets the largest share of food. The same works in other uh, larger mammals as well. Yeah, all right, cool. Okay, so next question. What is an evolutionary strategy that favors the reproductive success of an organism's relatives, even when at the cost of an organism's own survival and reproduction? What is it called? Is it gene selection? Is it relatedness, kin selection, favoritism? All right, kin selection. One answer for kin selection. Any more answers? C, C. All right. Yes. So definitely yes. The and correct answer is kin selection. So moving on with respect to the kin selection, so you have the Hamilton's rule, right, which is a central theorem inclusive of fitness, which is kin selection, the theory, and it predicts that social behavior involves under specific combinations of three things. What are these three things? Cost, yeah, benefit, and right, relation. So, could you explain this, Devesh? Maybe relationship of. Right, correct, absolutely correct. Yes, and the cost of the individual. So there is one individual that benefits, and there is one individual that gets harmed. Right, they are throwing themselves in the line of harm to protect another related individual. And what is this act called? What is the term of this? What is this kind of behavior called? The act of, yeah, correct, altruism. Okay, I think Ronald is the most active person on this. Any other any other ideas of what it could be? Or does everyone agree with Ronald? All right, I'm going to take that as a yes and move on. Okay, so yes, altruism is favored by natural selection when R into B is greater than C, right? Where you have relatedness into the benefit of uh, one party is greater than the cost that the altruistic party has to suffer, right? So here in an example, under predatory threat, a female fairy wren bird chooses to remain a helper in her natal nest and help her mother in feeding more offspring, right? So you have these helper birds that continue to remain in their natal nest, which is where they hatched, and they help the parents raise more offspring rather than go and set up a new nest of their own, right? So this is an act of altruism. And in this case, the relatedness between the mother and the daughter is, of course, zero point 0.5. The benefit is equal to 2, which is the number of offspring that the mother is able to raise in the presence of the helper daughter. And C is equal to zero point 0.1, which is the risk that the helper incurred by not being able to produce her own offspring. So, could you state whether altruism in this case is favored or not? So, you have the equation on the top. R into B, if it's greater than C. Yeah, okay, yes, yes. What else? Altruism is favored. Anybody feels altruism is not favored in this case? Wow, someone's joining the class 2 minutes. Hmm, interesting. Okay. Yes. All right. So yes, altruism is favored in this case because the relatedness into the benefit is much greater than the cost that is incurred by the helper daughter. All right. So now I think this is the last question. Okay. So this is a fun one, but we are almost run out of time. So can anyone quickly tell me what is an ethogram? And while someone is thinking of what an ethogram is, I'm going to explain this slide. So on the right is a tiny little bird that is found in the high elevation mountain forests of the Western Ghats. It's called the white-bellied cholikili, and it's rarely visible. But because the understory is also really dark, and this bird is also found, and bird is also not brightly colored. But you are a scientist, and you are trying to study the feeding behavior of this bird, right? Graphical behavior, behavior and organism list, sure. Adaptation related feeding, behavior and organism during performance of certain activity. Yes, I think that is the closest to uh, what an ethogram is. So, so you are a scientist and you have to collect important data points that would help you understand the feeding behavior of this particular bird in the forest. So, what do you think are the data parameters that you would be collecting? So, imagine you are a scientist. You have to design a data sheet and you have a notepad with certain things to fill in while you're going to collect data. What would you collect? Study site. Okay, that is one parameter you would take down. You're studying the feeding behavior of this bird in the forest. So yes, you need to note down where you are. Correct. What is the type of prey? What else? There is literally no right or wrong. Yeah, activity at a particular time. Yes, that's a very important parameter. You have to note down the time at which you have made any observation of the bird for aging. What else? Anything that comes to mind? Energy consumed during feeding. Yeah, that is probably an interesting point, but that is not something that is very observable, is it? You won't be able to quantify that, or you won't be able to note down presence or absence. Correct. Time spent in an activity, yes. Seasonal variations in the diet. How would you monitor seasonal variations in diet? That's a good point, but how would you do that? Anybody else can also answer. Sure, yes. So, in the absence of cicadas present in the forest, the bird will probably, yeah, eat some alternative food. So, yeah. So, the thing that I was trying to get at is you have to monitor it through various seasons, right? You can't only study it during one season for a few days. You have to study it throughout the year and ideally over several years to get any pattern. So yeah, I'm happy all of you are giving like very interesting and good parameters that do collect valuable data. Any other last few parameters? But if not, any questions or anything? I think we're already in yeah, this exam pattern. I have asked about this. I am yet to receive an answer. I think everybody is very. I think the exam is like probably how many 8 9 weeks from now. So I think you can just carry on with the learning pattern, and it's not all about the marks. But yeah, I'm you need more such classes. Okay, so well we have two tutorial sessions. So one actually happens on Friday evening, and the other one is by me on Tuesday evening. So every week there are two such classes. So we are only two TAs for this. I can just find out about the exam pattern again and let you know. But yeah. All the slides again for those who joined late. Sure, I can. So all the slides are going to be put up, and all the videos for this class are also going to be put up. All right. So slide one was interactions. I'm going to really go through this very fast. Then we again had different types of interactions out here. Again, a question on interactions. A lot of it on interaction, positive and negative clubbed together. This was a slide on the flight initiation distance, which is the minimum distance beyond which, if you approach any organism, it flees. Another interaction question. Again, parasitism, interaction, invasive species and how they affect the ecosystem, social hierarchy, termites, trade offs between any kind of activity that is performed by an organism, cost benefit trade offs. Again, grouping or schooling, shoaling behavior of fishes. Again, a social structure of doors. Then you have, again, a couple of slides now on altruism, Hamilton's rule, and kin selection. And yes, finally, an ethogram. All right. If any other questions are there, if not, then I shall see you next week. And the videos will be upload. This video will be uploaded as well as the slides will be made available to everyone. All right. Thanks, everyone. See you next week.